The Dodgers' two big pitching acquisitions, both faced opposing hitters for the first time on Tuesday. How did it go? Let's talk about it live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with us here live on Tuesday evening, a little bit later than usual. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And you can make it easier to find by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our Boys in Blue every weekday morning. And Boys in Blue was kind of the theme on Tuesday. Two big acquisitions the Dodgers made this offseason. Blake Snell and Roki Sasaki both either debuted or kind of debuted on Tuesday. Blake Snell, man, I can't believe it.
You got to get past it once.
One of these days, yeah. Blake Snell with an N made his Cactus League debut. Roki Sasaki pitched a simulated game, but against a different team. So against White Sox minor leaguers for the most part, I think. And so both of them we got to see and or hear about pitching in Dodger Blue. And it's kind of, spring training is about checking off those boxes. And this is kind of a big checkpoint along the way.
Yeah, seeing guys on the mound in, for the Dodgers or on the backfield, whatever it was, is always a good thing. In the case of Blake Snell, it was Blake Snell, like a typical Blake Snell, like when you talk about pros and cons for Blake Snell, and you talk about the cons, besides allowing runs, it's inefficient innings, and that's exactly, you got 30 pitches to get through an inning, didn't allow any runs, but if this had been a regular season game, he would have been pretty hard pressed to get past 5 innings. But all in all, like I said, health is the most important thing right now, and he's healthy. Some of the stuff looked good, and that's just the next part moving forward, like you said. And then Roki on the other side, the clip that went viral was the one that he gave up a home run on, but the rest of the stuff, from what we've heard from people there and said from people there, the splitter was real, and he'll go through some of these growing pains.
Yeah, I know we have at least one person in the chat, our buddy Doomsal, who I believe was at Roki's session. As for Snell, even though it was a very Snellish, inefficient inning, it was also inefficient in a different way than we're used to, because he faced 4 batters, went to an 0-2 count on all 4 of them. I mean, the big thing was mostly that J.P. Crawford kept fouling off pitches. He didn't quite have that put away stuff that it's almost like this stuff is either not good enough or a little too good, because it's too good to get a ground out, but not good enough to get a strikeout. And so J.P. Crawford just kept fouling off pitches. I think his at bat to lead off the game was 9 pitches, and that kind of set the tone. So he was throwing strikes for the most part, did give up 1 hit to Randy Rosarena. But other than that, he had a strikeout. He got 3 outs, and he said afterwards that he wasn't thrilled with his off-speed stuff, that he felt like it not thrilled, basically that it's just not there yet. That he said he wasn't really so much trying to execute it as to throw it for strikes, to get it in the strike zone, which, for him, I think is probably the first step. And you think about where he was last year at this time, I don't think he'd even signed yet with the team. And so he's ahead of schedule, and he turned out pretty good last year. It's just going to be a matter of, hearing him talk, it sounded like this was a case of first step with the curveball is getting in the strike zone. And that's what he did. And threw some pitches, threw against opposing hitters who are trying to hit the ball. All those things are big steps along the way.
Yeah, it's especially a guy like Snell who knows his routine, knows his body, knows what he needs to get through. you can set up the spring the way you want to set it up, and he might know that, hey, you know what, I haven't picked up a ball, or I don't throw this, or I don't throw that, or that's why we talk about spring the way we do, because there's obviously, you would like every guy to go out there and just not give up runs ever, and live in the fantasy land. But the reality is that these guys, either the curveball is not there, I'm only going fastballs, I want to work on the two seam, in 0-2 counts, I'm trying to find another pitch that I want to use as a strikeout pitch, or a pitch that a show me pitch in order to get to my strikeout pitch. Like, there's so much that's going on that's beyond our control. But again, walking off healthy, coming back the next day healthy, that's the most important part. We'll have to wait till the morning for that part, but so far so good.
Absolutely. And we always preach, don't worry about results. Even third segment today, we're going to talk about Ben Casparius. And even that, it's not going to be the results we're talking about. It's going to be the stuff. And specific things about the stuff. With Blake Snell, it's the stuff. With Roki Sasaki, it's the stuff. And for Sasaki, I think it's a big step to face hitters in the U.S. who are trying to hit the ball off him. Even a live BP against your own team, it's like, it's not the same. Facing a guy who, I can go out there on the mound and this guy can be my enemy. And Kyle Teel hit a homer off him. Kyle Teel just headlined to trade for Garrett Crochet. Kyle Teel is going to be a good hitter. And it's probably good for Sasaki to get punched in the mouth. His first batter he faces, ended up throwing the equivalent of 3 innings. It was a glorified, it was just a live BP against another team. It's not like it was an actual game. It was a sim game, live BP, whatever you want to call it. But threw 38 pitches in 3 innings, gave up the home run and a double, but also had a strikeout, got some ground outs, and all in all, more than anything for Roki, I think this was just I put on a Dodger uniform and I went out and faced guys in a White Sox uniform. And I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, Dave Roberts mentioned that he was in mid-90s, which is where they expect him to be at this point. So I don't know if there was a follow-up that I didn't see any of. Where do they expect him to be once he's fully going? Like, is he back in the upper 90s? Did they, obviously I don't think they can figure out if they've unlocked anything, or if any of the homework assignments are going to end up working and he gets back to, what he was throwing in years previous, before last season. But that's why it was interesting to me that they kind of tabbed him as the guy that's going to pitch in Japan, just for the simple fact of it seems like they're going to slow play him a little bit, or he's only throwing once a week. But again, in Japan, they could just say, hey, this is part of your spring. You're going to throw 3 innings, 4 innings, however many pitches. And, that's the majority of it. Yeah,
we did have a comment in the chat asking, apparently in the 3rd inning that Roki pitched, he went to a lower leg kick instead of the high leg kick. I think if anything, that tells us that he is a work in progress, which we knew, based on his whole recruiting process, everything, that his goal in coming to the United States, one of his goals is to get better. And so they are going to be messing with things and trying different things. And it's a great time to do it in a sim game against guys who are trying to hit off you, but that doesn't actually matter at all. Go out there and try different things. So I'm interested to see, following up, a few days from now when Roki throws again, mechanics wise, I'm excited to see him in the Cactus League so we can actually watch it on TV rather than seeing different people's iPhone videos from the backfields. But all in all, I think what we're seeing is the beginning of the evolution of Roki into being a big league pitcher, whatever that ends up looking like.
Yeah, it's kind of like drafting the guy out of college, although he, a little bit older than that, or no, he's around the same age. It's kind of like drafting a guy out of college where you haven't had time to work with them yet, and now you're getting time to work with them, and that's where you're at moving forward. Whereas, if you draft a guy out of high school, you're working with them since then, and you kind of have a little bit more knowledge of what's going on with him. But yeah, it's fun to see, but definitely, like, even when I was in spring training and like, grabbing some videos from the side, and it was just like, yeah, I'd rather just watch it where I can see everything that's going on instead of having to guess what's going on. If you're behind home plate, it's a weird angle. If you're on the side of the home plate, it's a weird angle. But that's the one time where I want to see what I'm looking at.
Absolutely. Another player who came over from the Asian leagues this offseason was Hyeseong Kim. And Dave Roberts has had some interesting comments about Kim that we'll dig into next. So thank you for making us your first listen, and please keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love that you can choose no shells or in shell because every situation is different. When I'm sitting at my desk and want a quick snack, the no shells variety is perfect. If I'm watching my son play baseball out in the fresh air, sometimes it's nice to crack my own shells, so the in shell options make me happy. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. No shells, Wonderful Pistachios is great for that grab and go ease, and there's not much better than the satisfying crack of opening each shell in the in-shell variety. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. We are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodger your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks to our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning, and then voila, you are an everydayer. Also, you can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube, 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. I do think it's funny that I still can't say Blake Snell's name, but I can say get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs the protein punch. So, maybe Blake Snell's name just needs to be harder, and then I'll be able to say it. But real quick, before we jump into Hyeseong Kim, we do have a couple comments, people hand-wringing about the Dodgers play in spring training. We're probably not going to dig into that because I think the most starters the Dodgers have had in any game. So like of the guys expected to be in the starting 9 lineup on opening day, I think they've had a couple games with 3, and that I don't think they've had more than 3 players. So, these games have gotten out of hand. I don't think it tells us anything about how Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow are going to pitch that whoever it was today couldn't get an out. I can't remember that. That 7th inning was ugly. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. And so we're probably not going to dig into that too much. It doesn't even really tell us anything about the Dodgers' future because it's not even like the top prospects. These are just guys that are filling out the roster. The Dodgers have a plan for the spring to get their big leaguers ready for the games in Japan. And some of that plan includes letting guys who don't matter play 6 innings of each game.
Yeah, and that plus injury. Freddie Freeman hasn't played yet. Will Smith hasn't played yet. Shohei hasn't played yet. That's just the nature of what's going on. And realistically, it is kind of funny, though. Like, they're giving up double-digit runs every game. If you're not really, paying attention. And then when that, even if you don't watch the game, you go back, check the box score, and you're like, oh, I don't even know who this guy is that gave up all these runs. So, yeah,
Richard asked, when do we start seeing more of the regulars playing? Later this week, probably. Like they've said that Smith and Freeman are probably this week, and Ohtani is probably, not long after that. I think this week too. I mean, because they said by the end of February. Yeah. So, we're going to start seeing more of the players. There was also a question about why can't any of the catchers throw anybody out at second. That will also, change a little bit when it's Will Smith instead of Chris Oakey. I don't know if, and I think it's a lot on the pitchers too. So, we're not going to wring our hands too much about that. But jumping back into what we do want to talk about, Hyeseong Kim, obviously a surprise acquisition by the Dodgers this offseason, and we haven't really been sure. We've talked a lot about, we don't really know what to expect from him. And so far on the offensive side, he's been pretty lackluster. On the defensive side, he has a couple errors. He looks fine, but not amazing. But what was interesting was Dave Roberts said on Tuesday, he was asked about the possibility of Hyeseong Kim starting the season in the minors, and he kind of said everything's on the table. That is a possibility. I guess we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the position, which
this is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for them to say this because it felt like he got signed, and then they were ambiguous about what was going on, and then everyone assumed, oh, now he's the everyday second baseman. And they trade Lux, and then it's like, oh, well, that's for Hyeseong Kim. I'm waiting for them to say something like, okay, he might not be a major league player to start his career, which isn't a bad thing. He's completely revamped his swing from everything they've said. And, he's dealing with different velocity and all this other stuff. There's a lot going on to where, and with the Dodgers, the roster, the way it's kind of set up, him starting the year in the minors because he's able to, compared to some people that aren't able to, makes a lot more sense. So I'm glad they finally said it. Now we can have this as a true idea in our mind of, okay, this might be something happening.
Yeah, and we said early on in the process that the Dodgers probably didn't sign him planning to start him in the minors, but it was absolutely a possibility. There was kind of a big deal made that that his contract does allow him to be sent to the minors. I do think that was kind of misreported because it was reported as there's a clause in his contract that says that he can't block being sent to the minors. I think it was more the lack of a clause saying that he can block it, because the default is that when you are signing a rookie contract, when you don't have the service time, you can be sent to the minors until you have 5 years of service time. You have 3 option years available, and so it's the exception to be able to block that. And but either way, however it's worded, yeah, the fact is the Dodgers knew this was a possibility when they signed him, even if it wasn't the plan. And I think that's probably still where we are. I think we're still in it's a possibility, not necessarily the plan, because, and maybe this segues into the position discussion, because it looks like center field might be his best shot at making the team, because Tommy Edman so far this spring, I think, has only played second base. Tommy Edman is a Gold Glove second baseman. Second base is his best position. He can play center field, but he doesn't. He's not great. He's not bad, but he's not great. Doesn't have a great arm out there, and so second base is Tommy Edman's best chance to contribute to the team defensively is as the second baseman. So it seems like maybe Hyeseong Kim, James Outman, and Andy Pages are fighting for that spot in center field, and that maybe that's a little bit advantage to Kim because of the two guys he's going up against.
Yeah, well, I'll defend Andy Pages a little bit by saying it's funny how, like, does nobody think there's a way for him to improve? Not you specifically, but does people not think he can improve defensively? Like he's a corner outfielder. He probably realistically shouldn't be playing center field, but like the way people talk about Andy Pages' defense, which it wasn't the most fun to watch, but I don't think it was that terrible. The numbers might bear that out to be different than my feelings, but it's like, he doesn't just stay that way. He can get better. James Outman, the same thing offensively, although that I feel like that's probably a little bit tougher just because he's been the same hitter for a while, and it's nothing new. He struck out 3 times again the other day. I mean, that's just kind of the way he is. So, for Kim, I think it's the fact that he had to go through a whole new swing and the fact that he's figuring it out. I'm sure he's tried to up his bat speed, and that, it might be throwing off some of the other mechanics. Like, there's a lot going on. Yeah, I think it makes sense for him to start in the year in the minors. And, Pages and or Outman is a capable replacement in the moment. Like I said the other day for the Dodgers, like, you're allowed to have one spot in your lineup that maybe isn't going to be great, or you're allowed to maybe have one spot defensively that isn't going to be great. And that might be the case for the Dodgers until somebody either steps up or they just kind of roll with it the way they have it.
Yeah. As for Pages, my concern with Pages defensively is that he has played quite a bit of center field in the minor leagues. Like, it's not like he was thrust into center field. He played more center field last year than he has, but he's played a lot of center field over the years. And, so my concern is that he, I mean, really, maybe I still have this in my head. Remember a couple of years ago, the prospect rankings had said that Pages will be lucky to be able to play corner outfield spot physically, that he might just be a DH. And then he did improve his physical conditioning. But, I have a hard time seeing a guy go from may not even be able to stick in right field to, he's a major league center fielder. So we'll have to see. But, like you said, the Dodgers won a World Series last year with Andy Pages playing a lot of center field, although notably he didn't play much center field in the postseason because, I think that's when the defense, maybe that mattered a little bit more. But I am interested to see, there's no guarantee that Kim will be a better defensive center fielder than Pages, because Kim has played a lot less center field than Andy Pages has.
Yeah, and like I said, there's different ways to go about it. Ultimately, when it gets to, if nobody's good enough offensively or defensively center field, they could do something. They could just, chalk it up to we'd rather have good defense and not worry too much about offense. And I think that's probably the best way to go. So in that case, maybe Outman does end up lasting a lot longer than we think if Kim can't get it figured out. But I kind of compare him to Hyeseong Kim because, they're coming over from similar leagues. They were similar enough hitters. Kim was a little bit better hitter, I believe, before he came over here. But even with him, it took him a year before he became a legitimate guy that could be a threat with the bat. And, maybe that's going to be the case with Hyeseong Kim. And if it is, the Dodgers have guys that can hold that spot. Maybe this is the year finally Kike, he can see now. Maybe he ends up emerging as somebody that can play center field every day for the Dodgers. But, there's different ways for the Dodgers to attack it. And, we'll just have to wait and see. I hate always saying that, but, that's really the way it goes sometimes.
That is the answer with Hyeseong Kim right now. We're very much in a wait and see. A lot can happen in the next 3 weeks before they're leaving for Japan. They leave in 2 weeks from today, I think. That's kind of crazy. Real quick before we take our last break, quick question from Richie in the chat. Why not Tommy Edman at shortstop and Mookie at second? For me, Tommy Edman is a passable shortstop, not a great shortstop. He's a great second baseman. I think there's every reason to think that Mookie Betts will be at least as good at shortstop in 2025 as Tommy Edman would be. You agree, Vince?
Yeah. You're putting your trust in Mookie. Like, that's just the way it is.
And you can always change that later. You can flip him if you need to. So we are going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about Ben Casparius. He pitched on Tuesday. Results were good, but that's not what we care about. The stuff was very interesting. We're going to dig into that and maybe a couple interesting comments from around the league. So thank you for making us your first listen, and please keep it locked on Dodgers. We are back. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Thanks for being every day, or thanks for being here with us live on Tuesday evening. If you are, good group going on here. Nice chat. We appreciate all of that. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Text direct with us, get our thoughts before the podcast, one-on-one conversations, and get access to our Discord server, all that good stuff. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. And with that said, Ben Casparius, former Locked On Dodgers guest, Ben Casparius played a much bigger role in the postseason last year than anybody would have expected, and comes into this year kind of with his role up in the air. And I mentioned the other day that Keith Law's prospect rankings suggested that Ben Casparius should just throw himself into being a reliever because he has the stuff to be a really good reliever. And he maybe showed that more than we've even seen before on Tuesday. This tweet from who's it from? It was from Jacob Brownson. He talked about Ben Casparius' velocities in this game on Tuesday compared to last year. His fastball last year averaged 95.5, today 96.9. So that's up 1.4 miles an hour. Last year, his slider was 84.3, today 86.7, so up 2.4 miles an hour. His cutter last year, 91 miles an hour, today 94.4, so up 3.4 miles an hour. And his curveball last year, 79.8, today 85.6, so up 5.8 miles per hour. Like a couple of those, the curveball for sure, and maybe even the cutter and the slider. I mean, that's different enough to almost be actually a different pitch. Like that curveball is going from a soft curveball to a hard curveball.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going from a 12-6 to more of a sweeper type or different ways to go about it. But yeah, and this is on February 25th. This is in a spring training game. Like, you think, maybe he just came in a little bit hotter than whatever, blah, blah. Ben Casparius was throwing in some of the biggest innings you could possibly throw last year. And, wasn't necessarily amped up enough to throw. Like, it's not a matter of amped up
No
or
more amped up for a spring training game than for a World Series game.
yeah, it's not an adrenaline thing. This is something that he worked on, and this is something that he's brought into it, and it's not even March yet, and he's doing these across the board. Now, I can see why people would be like, oh, we don't know, and maybe we'll get him back on and talk about it, because if it's something he did directly in order to increase the velocity, then I'm not concerned that it's just him trying to throw harder. And I would bet that is the case, that he did something, whether it was more working out, different mechanics, that whatever it was, like that was clearly something that he had on his mind this offseason.
Yeah, and it could even be embracing the reliever mindset. When we talked to him, he said he had basically even the games he had pitched in relief in the Arizona Fall League, they were all piggybacks. So he prepared like a starter and he went into the game like a starter. His first time ever pitching in relief, in true relief, was his major league debut. And so he's had that starter mindset. And maybe he spent the offseason thinking, I'm a reliever now, or there's a good chance, my best chance to pitch in the big leagues. I've seen all the starters the Dodgers have signed. My best chance of being a Los Angeles Dodger instead of an Oklahoma City. What are they? The Comets? Is that what they came up with?
Comets.
But my best chance to be a Dodger is in the bullpen. And so I'm going to be a reliever. And we've talked about, if Dustin May embraced that reliever mindset, would he pick up a few miles an hour? I could totally picture Dustin May pumping 103 out of the bullpen, Casparius, obviously not going to pump 103, but if he's throwing 96.9 miles an hour on average on February 25th, then maybe he is going to be throwing 98 out of the bullpen. And with, a reliever throwing 98 and having three other good pitches, I mean, it could be a really, really good version of Ben Casparius.
Yeah, and the door's open for him to make the opening day roster now with, Kopech and Evan Phillips not being ready for the start of the season. And it's one of those where, as good as he could be and as good as he might be, but this fact of the matter is he probably still might get optioned a couple of times throughout the year, just because that's the way the Dodgers roster is kind of set up. But he can show that he's legitimate, that he's here. And with Michael Grove, they've kind of always were in a weird spot. Kyle Hurt, they were always like kind of making them keep both. Maybe Ben Casparius made the choice for them and said, you know what, I'm a reliever now, or I'm going to throw as hard as I can, or as hard as I don't have to worry about going 5-6 innings, and I'm going to show out that I am better than all these other people.
Yeah, and it might work out for him. I am pretty excited to see his performance over the next couple of weeks, his stuff and all of that, and see what he can do to end up in the big leagues a lot this year. Last couple of things we want to talk about, just a couple of interesting quotes from around the league. And, I don't want to pile on to Nestor Cortes too much because, I have nothing against Nestor Cortes, and I have enjoyed the highlights of him that I've watched 8,000 times this offseason.
I didn't have anything against him before, but
but what he said on Tuesday, he's not even on the Yankees anymore. He's on the Brewers now. But what he said about the Yankees and the 2024 World Series, he said, we were the better team. I see it that way, and I'm sure everybody in that clubhouse sees it that way. And I guess my takeaway from that is that's a compliment to the Dodgers, because how good do the Dodgers have to be to beat the better team in 5 games? That's pretty impressive,
Yeah. And obviously everyone in the locker room is going to be like, I don't think the Yankees were thoroughly outplayed in the sense of it was 10-0 every game. But when you have to make the concessions like, oh, well, we should have won game 1. And, then, games like, and then we should have won game 5. Like, no, you didn't win game 5 because you didn't make the plays that you needed to make in order to win that game. You didn't win game 1 because, one of the reasons is because you served up, some to Freddie Freeman. Like, no matter, and I've probably argued this on the other side before, maybe not for the Dodgers, maybe for like the Lakers or something like that. Like, oh, the games were close. Like when they lost to the Nuggets, like all the games were close. But yeah, they were close, but then the Nuggets came out on top every time because when push came to shove, they did what they needed to do to win. And that's kind of what it is. Like, you don't lose a series in 5 games and it's because one or two things happen here or there, and you should have won this game, should have won this game. Like, nah, you lost in 5 games. That's the reality. And and Anthony Rizzo, Alex Verdugo, still not signed. Those were 2 of your starters that are still not on a team right now.
That kind of attitude you're talking about, that rationalization or whatever, that's regular season mindset. That is keeping your hopes up. You know what? Yeah, I know we lost that series. Yeah, we lost that series, but I remember in maybe it's just, it was this last year when the Dodgers lost the series to the Phillies early in the year. And I said, yeah, you know what? The Phillies were the better team in that series. But you look at it, other than the one blowout game, the series went about how we expected. It was close games. The Dodgers were missing these guys, and in the end, it played out. That's regular season talk. When the series you're talking about is the World Series and the season is over and you're on a different team now, I think you just shut your mouth and say, yep, we lost. That sucks. And I am going to be on highlights for the rest of baseball history because I just gave up one of the most famous home runs in World Series history. One other guy who maybe needs to talk less is Buck Showalter, who it was a few days ago. He was talking about Roki Sasaki's first bullpen session and how many people were there watching it and just criticizing that. He's saying, don't you guys have something else to do? And why are there that many people in camp anyway? It's not like this isn't a tryout camp. If you don't know who your team is, you've got bigger problems and blah, blah, blah. And I just want to point out the fact that twice Buck Showalter has gotten fired, and then the team that fired him won the World Series the next year. And then a third time Buck Showalter got fired, and the team that fired him went to the NLCS the next year. And so 3 of the 5 times that he's been fired, the team got much, much better after he left. He's managed 22 seasons and finished in first place 3 times. He has managed a total of 5 postseason games. Buck Showalter was a bad manager even before he was old and out of touch. Now he's a bad manager who's also old and out of touch.
Yeah. Like, what do you care that guys want to watch this guy pitch? What do you like? Oh, you think they can't go work out the extra 5 minutes? You think they can't stay later an extra 10 minutes because they took 10 minutes off to watch? Like, what does it matter? And it's interesting because whatever he was talking on, he talked about Dave Roberts and how, people talk about Dave Roberts having stacked teams and whatever. And he defended him and said, like, you still got to win, or I forget the exact wording. And I was like, oh, cool. Buck Showalter's, saying something not that dumb. And then the next, I scroll on TikTok a little further and then I see him saying this and I'm, oh, never mind.
Yeah. It's almost as if he doesn't totally understand the elements of culture that make up a winning team. And maybe that has something to do with why he didn't manage very many winning teams. So anyway, that'll do it for us for today. You got anything else, Vince?
And nothing else.
All right. Dodgers will play again. They only have one off day this spring before they head to Japan. So plenty of games to watch. And, hopefully the non-Dodgers will play better and the real Dodgers will play more as we get going. And it'll be a little bit more fun to watch. But either way, we will be here with you every weekday to talk about it. So thank you for being here with us. Please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you can be an everydayer. Also, be sure to go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports A and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Both of our DMs are open over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.